What are like the top biggest headaches you see people coming into you with that you realize could have been addressed if things just were done appropriately the first time around instead of fixing something later on?
Yeah, for the most part, it's just not keeping track of what they're spending on the business. So, a lot of people come in and say, I didn't make any money on my business. And I actually had an example of this a couple months ago. Another a tax person, said that this company made about $100,000 in their first year in business. And she goes, I don't have, I asked where the money was. She goes, I don't have one dime of that money. So what we ended up realizing when we asked a couple questions and started digging into understanding their business and understanding what they did, the other tax accountant just never asked any questions. It just took her numbers to be basically the truth at that point. Where I asked about three questions, visited her on site, and I asked, I said, I don't see any of this equipment and any of these items that are in this. Actually, it was a beauty salon. I didn't see any of the chairs, any of the, tools of the trade that they do to work every single day. None of that stuff was in her numbers. And she goes, "Oh yeah, they never asked about that." And I said, "I could easily see about $100,000 investment that you made to get this off the ground, because again, they had a build out. They had to put in 6 or 7 chairs. They obviously, it doesn't. I don't. You go to beauty salons obviously for obvious reasons, but um, you know, uh, all the different equipment, the hair dryers, the combs, all the scissors, all that stuff, none of that stuff was captured as a business expense. So, but the tax accountant never asked about that. And I could clearly see in less than a couple minutes that that stuff had to be added on to get them correct. So by asking those questions, we ended up amending their return and getting it to be the right number because she said, we spent a lot of money to get this off the ground, but now I have to pay this large tax bill and I don't feel like I made that money. And I said, I agree. You definitely did not make that money. Hopefully, in year two and year three, things turn a lot more positive, which is what they're starting to do within the business. But day one, there was at least $100,000 investment that the previous tax accountant just never asked about, and then never documented. So I just tell people to keep track of everything that they're doing with the business. And what I do is I just start asking questions. We deal with so many different types of businesses. There's a core for a lot of the business that are really the same. So you can ask the same type of questions, but you kind of have to, depending on the industry, frame them different ways. But you're able to get that information from the owner. But the number one thing is just people just not keeping track of their expenses and not understanding what they spent to get this off the ground and what they're spending day to day. Because then the second question becomes, this is what it costs you every day. So to turn the lights on, turn the heat or AC on, depending on the time of the year. Everything that they're doing, there's an hourly or daily cost. That's then what your pricing strategy becomes then to start to make money at that point. Because again, as we talked about earlier, if I'm charging you $1 for my services, yet it's costing me $1.10 to get there, I'm losing money. And unfortunately, that business is not going to survive unless I have really deep pockets and friends and family that are willing to give me the money to make it go. So we work with them to try to figure out what that pricing is to make sure that they are pricing everything correctly to make money. Again, levels of money that you make are different depending on industry and different things, but you want to at least get to a break even status pretty quickly and then start to make profit after that.